It was almost funny how quickly my life went from quiet invisibility to suffocating spectacle. One week I was just another kid in suburban Ohio, and the next I was the boy everyone whispered about, the one with the omega mark. Except it wasn't funny. It was brutal, humiliating, and so loud I could barely breathe. I remember the day it started, how my mother orchestrated the entire thing like it was some cruel stage play. She had always been controlling, the kind of woman who could smile sweetly at neighbors while crushing you beneath her expectations. But even I didn't see this coming, her arranging my future, choosing the boy, and pushing us into each other's lives like chess pieces. And the boy? Him. Ethan Carter. My mother's friend's son. The golden boy of our town. Blonde hair, blue eyes, star quarterback, effortlessly confident. The kind of boy who could make teachers bend the rules and make girls fall in love without even trying. And me? I was nothing compared to him. At least that's how it felt. The first time my mother left us alone, she smiled like she had just solved the world's greatest puzzle. "You two should spend time together," she said, her tone carrying no room for refusal. I wanted to argue, to tell her this wasn't fair, but Ethan just smirked at me, leaned against the doorframe like it was a game. "Guess we're stuck with each other," he said casually. I hated how my chest tightened when he said it. That night, I lay in bed replaying the way his voice had carried, the way his eyes had studied me with something sharper than indifference. I told myself it didn't matter, that this was just my mother's obsession with appearances. But something inside me whispered otherwise. Something dangerous. Something I didn't want to name. Weeks passed and the closeness became unavoidable. He drove me home from school, walked with me in the halls, sat across from me at dinners our mothers arranged. People started noticing. Whispers followed us everywhere. Some laughed, some sneered, and some watched with curiosity, as though waiting for us to break. I tried to resist him. I tried to keep my heart barricaded. But Ethan had this way of looking at me, like he saw through every shield I built. And the more I resisted, the more he leaned in, like he was daring me to admit the truth I kept swallowing. One Friday night, it all broke open. My mother had orchestrated another dinner, candles and too much wine, forcing us into intimacy. Ethan walked me home afterward, the air crisp and the stars scattered above us. I was shivering, not from the cold but from the weight of it all, the lies, the expectations, the truth clawing at my throat. He stopped at the edge of my yard, his hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. For once, he didn't look cocky. He looked human, tired, vulnerable. "Does this bother you as much as it bothers me?" he asked softly. The question pierced me. My first instinct was to nod, to admit yes, it suffocated me. But then I saw his eyes, and there was something else there, something like hope. "I don't know what bothers me more," I whispered. "The fact that everyone's pushing us together, or the fact that I don't completely hate it." His breath hitched. He took one step closer, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Then stopped pretending. The kiss didn't happen that night. It almost did, but fear yanked me back. I ran inside, heart pounding, leaving him standing there in the dark. But 2 nights later, it happened. It was reckless, inevitable, and it changed everything. We were in his car, parked by the lake on the outskirts of town. Music hummed low from the radio, some sad song that made the silence between us heavier. He turned to me, eyes searching, and I couldn't look away. His hand brushed mine, tentative but steady, and suddenly the dam inside me shattered. When his lips finally touched mine, it was fire and storm and everything I'd been denying. My body trembled, my heart raced, but I didn't pull away, couldn't, because for the first time, I wasn't drowning in fear, I was alive. But with life came the mark. I didn't understand it fully at first. All I knew was that something ancient and undeniable awoke inside me, branding me as Omega. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't a performance. It was truth, written into my skin and my soul. And the town noticed. My mother noticed. Ethan noticed most of all. When he saw it, Maea's face went pale. Then something hardened in his expression. Something fierce. He touched my cheek like I was breakable and whispered, "If this means you're mine, then I swear no one will hurt you. Not your mother. Not this town. Not anyone. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the storm was only just beginning. The whispers became shouts. Friends turned their backs. Families tightened their grip on old prejudices. The town that had once adored Ethan now looked at him with suspicion, disgust, betrayal. And me? I was the reason for it all. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, hating myself for dragging him down. Nights I told him to leave me to save himself. But every time he refused. You think I care what they say? He snapped once, his voice breaking with anger. You think their hate matters more than you? You're it for me. Do you get that? You're everything. Those words became my lifeline. But love, even fierce love, doesn't erase the weight of an entire world against you. The hardest part wasn't the taunts or the threats. It was the silence. The friends who stopped calling. The cousins who turned away at church. The teachers who looked at me differently. It was the quiet rejection that cut deepest. 1,000 invisible wounds no one else could see. And yet, through all of it, Ethan stayed. He walked beside me in the hallways even when the crowd parted like we were contagious. He held my hand in the diner when old men muttered under their breath. He kissed me in the open, daring anyone to say something. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was love, raw and unpolished, fighting to survive. But survival wasn't enough. At least not for him. Because Ethan wasn't just protecting me. He was preparing to challenge everything. The night of the confrontation will never leave me. It was at my mother's house, her living room overflowing with relatives and neighbors, their faces twisted with anger and disbelief. They spoke in hushed, poisonous tones, like they were standing at a funeral. Only it wasn't death they were mourning, it was love. My love. You're ruining him. Someone hissed at Ethan. You've disgraced your family? Another spat at me. And through it all, my mother sat rigid in her chair, her hands trembling on the armrests. She couldn't meet my eyes. Maybe because deep down she knew she had pushed me toward this, never expecting it to turn real. When the shouting grew unbearable, Ethan stood. He didn't shout back. He didn't curse them. He simply reached for my hand and held it in front of everyone. His grip was steady, his voice unshakable. You can hate me, you can turn your backs, but I won't let you break him. He is mine and I am his. Nothing you do changes that. The room erupted gasps, curses, whispers of disbelief. But all I could hear was the pounding of my heart and the certainty in his voice. For the first time, I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't scared. I was his and he was mine. We walked out together that night, into the cold air and the sharper cold of rejection. But even then, I felt lighter than I had in months. The weeks that followed were brutal. Doors closed. Friendships shattered. The world shrank until it felt like it was just us against everything else. There were days I wanted to collapse under the weight of it all. But every time I faltered, Ethan was there. He took me to the lake when I couldn't breathe, his arm around my shoulders as I cried into the night. He whispered promises when nightmares tore me apart. He kissed me like the world couldn't touch us, even when the world was clawing at our backs. And slowly, things began to shift. Some friends drifted back, their silence breaking with awkward apologies. Teachers who had turned cold softened again, their compassion returning. Even neighbors who had once sneered started nodding in quiet acknowledgement when they saw us. Not all of them, not most, but enough. Enough to remind me that change was possible. One moment etched itself into me like scripture. We were sitting on the hood of his car at the lake, the sun bleeding gold across the water. He turned to me, his eyes fierce but tender. I meant what I said that night. I'll protect us. But it's not just about fighting them. It's about building something they can't destroy. I swallowed, my chest aching. And what if they never stop trying? Then we keep loving louder than their hate. His words weren't poetry. They weren't grand. But they were real, and they held me together when I felt like unraveling. Months passed. The storm quieted. Not because people suddenly accepted us, but because they realized we weren't breaking. We were still here, still in love, still holding hands in hallways and diners and sidewalks, daring the world to stop us. And then one evening, I found myself back in my mother's living room. The house felt different, emptier somehow. My mother sat alone, her face lined with exhaustion. She looked at me with eyes I couldn't read. For a long moment, silence stretched between us. Then she whispered, "I didn't think it would become this. I thought it was just a phase, something to pass." I sat across from her, my hands trembling. "It's not a phase. It's who I am, who we are." Her lips pressed together, her eyes glistening. "Do you love him?" The question pierced me, not because I doubted the answer, but because she asked it with such fragility, as though bracing for a truth she didn't want. "Yes," I whispered, "with everything I am." She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, something in her had shifted. Not acceptance, not fully, but the first fragile crack in the wall she'd built. Then, "I hope he takes care of you." It wasn't approval. It wasn't celebration. But it was enough. For now. The years that followed weren't perfect. We faced battles, whispers, and lingering prejudice. But we also carved out joy late-night drives, stolen kisses in grocery aisles, laughter spilling into the early hours of morning. We built a life together, piece by piece, love by love. And through every storm, Ethan kept his vow. He protected me, not just from others but from the shadows in my own head. He held me when I doubted myself. He reminded me that being marked, being Omega, wasn't shame, it was power. It was love written into my soul. The final proof came one summer evening, years after it all began. We stood in that same field where we had first touched hands under the glow of a fading sun. The air was warm, fireflies blinking around us. Ethan looked at me, his smile soft and certain. "We made it," he whispered. I smiled through tears, my chest swelling. "We did." He leaned in, pressing his forehead to mine. "And we'll keep making it. Always." I believed him. I still do. Because despite everything, despite the hate, the fear, the heartbreak, we had built something unbreakable. Love. Not the fragile kind that hides in the dark, but the kind that burns in the open, daring the world to look and learn. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being seen. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.